All right. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're going to be speaking with Ryan and Brenda Woods, who are founders of Paranormal Triage, a group based out of Northern California. So, join us tonight as we talk to them about the formation of their team, some stuff they've experienced, the mysteries of Mount Shasta, and more tonight on Paranomalies. Good evening, Aaron.
Good evening. How are you tonight?
Good, man. Trying not to get blown away with the wind today.
Oh my gosh, it was so bad.
Yeah,
Just
I was out driving earlier and my car was just kind of rocking back and forth at a stoplight. And I'm just like, oh, wow, we haven't had wind this high in a long time.
yeah, I didn't even get to see what it was like a constant wind or even what the gusts were at today, but just hearing it through, at work through the rooftop unit was crazy.
Yeah, it was nuts today, but
Yeah.
hopefully it'll calm down. We're supposed to have good weather for the weekend. And we have another investigation coming up
Yeah,
Sunday
it's a
night.
little different this week because we're doing it on Sunday night, but it is just to throw it out there, it's a music venue in Denver. So I know there's lots of them down there and no one's going to guess. I mean, they can
Yep.
guess, but we're not going to tell them if they're right or not. So
It's a secret. Yep.
yeah, I'm excited. It's a pretty cool place. It was like a brothel upstairs, and that's where we hear a lot of the activity is. So,
Yep.
we love out west and we love everything here. And, when you look at these old cities, and the old west part of them, that was quite a few places where bars, brothels, and
Bars
all
and
that kind of stuff.
brothels. Yep.
That's where stuff was going down at, bad deals and people drunk and all that kind of stuff, all that traumatic stuff. So
Yep. Yeah. Disagreements that weren't restricted by much law enforcement or, so they'd get a little bloodier than they do nowadays. And yeah,
yeah.
but
The building we're in is a little more modern, but it was, the old one was tore down. The one next to it was built in 1899. Pretty cool. I love that old West stuff and I'm
yep.
excited to get in there and see what we get.
Yep. It's going to be great. And that will be our episode 2 for season 2 of
Yeah.
Paraflix when we get that out. So
We're going to have 4 out and edited and out hopefully in the next month. And then, we'll have a break until the fall and then start getting some stuff out again.
yep. It's a fun cycle. I like it.
Yeah.
And just to put out that I believe it's on the 19th is we are hosting a Skeptics Night here in Cheyenne up at the Knights of Pythias. We've done a lot of, group events for people that want to learn to come in, how to come in and investigate. But we figured, let's get some skeptics in there. Let's show them how we investigate and some of the evidence that we hopefully get that night, and see if they can poke some holes in it or just give us a different perspective on what it could be.
That's what I'm looking forward to is maybe they can, give us a new way to look at something, or maybe we give them a new way to look at something. We've had some great stuff happen there. V is always chatty with us. We did have a private investigation where we got growled at. Explain that growl because I'll tell you what, I can't,
No,
So
and and when it was that guttural of a growl where you actually felt it in the air, it's I don't have an explanation for that one. I really don't.
yeah. We're going to have some new stuff there too. We have the new XLS that we got from Horn. They dropped their new product this week, and we've got one already. So we're
Yep.
going to have that full spectrum SLS there. I'm excited to start seeing what we get on SLS and what that full spectrum shows us.
Yep. That and the XLS with the LiDAR is just, as I've said before, absolutely amazing. I couldn't believe that, just using LiDAR, it could actually map out not only a chair across the room in just about perfect detail, but the tiny yes/no prism that was sitting on the chair. You
Right.
can also see. And
Yeah,
that
I
just
like the
blew me
color
away.
depth that you get, with that. So like those large hanging lights in the lodge floor, you can see that they're much closer than like the back wall. The same as like the stand in the middle of the room, So you
Yep.
get that color depth with that too. So if something's a little closer showing up on there, it is.
Yep. And the facial detail as well. Like you can actually make out facial features with the XLS, which,
Yeah,
really
that
blew
was
me
something I
away.
pointed out. I was like, this is
Yeah.
friggin' amazing.
Yep.
Again, we thank Horn for being a sponsor of our team and of the show. Real quick, let's show that video.
Introducing the latest generation of the SLS cameras from Horn Paranormal. The new FS SLS camera features SLS mapping and full spectrum capabilities with built-in IR lighting. See more at hornparanormal.com or hornparanormal.shop.
All right. So Scott and Kim put that together and kind of showcases the new product they've got out, and I highly recommend going over to their website and checking that out.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. I'm excited tonight. We actually get away from like the coast and the Midwest, the East Coast, I should say, because we're going to the other coast tonight.
Yep. We're going way out west.
There you go. Doesn't get much further west than these people. They're in Washington, and Paranormal Triage is who we have on tonight.
Yep. We were talking to them before the show started, and real nice couple, Ryan and Brenda. So let's go ahead and bring them in and hear this story.
Good evening, guys. How are you tonight?
Good. How are you guys?
Good.
Excited
Good.
to be here.
Yeah. We for a long time, we've been doing this only since October. And for a long time, I almost thought we were a Tennessee podcast, because for about a month and a half, we had everyone from Tennessee on here. So we've been on the East Coast and like in the Midwest. You're our first ones that are further west than we are.
Yeah. We have groups out here, but we're always like, man, we want to go back your way because you guys do way more stuff out there. I don't know what the deal is over here because we got so much to investigate and look at, and it's a lot of interesting places here. So
that's kind of what we're trying to showcase is that California's got a lot of good stuff paranormal wise to check out.
Yeah, that's what we say, that we don't have much even through here, and we got to go even more east to see some stuff.
Yeah.
We look at these cons and we're like, we want to go to a con, but you're 13. For us, it's 13 to like 22 hours. You guys, it's another 13 hours or something?
Yeah,
like 18. Yeah.
Most of it is out of state for us, but Southern California had a couple paracons that has had a couple paracons that we were a part of. But yeah, nice. Still, it's a 12-hour drive to get to those for us.
Yeah.
Long way.
So, we're happy to have you on tonight.
Yeah, we're excited.
So what got you guys started in the paranormal? Did you start together or did you start separately?
We started together. We'll get deep into it here, but we had some personal experiences in our house that kind of led to us getting interested in just as fans of watching paranormal type shows and TV and stuff, and kind of led into the hobby side of it. And then it got really real when we had experiences in our own living room and in our house. And then we looked back at past places we've lived and we had those experiences. And then that just like the filter was off. We were off to the races.
And what was happening in the house?
Well, we lived in this ranch house. Well, actually, being first responders, I guess we could take it back a little farther before we were watching ghost shows. So in my local area, I started as a volunteer firefighter, and we had some kids get in a moped accident, and one of the kids passed away. So I went home that night, and obviously we were kind of stressed out and stuff. And he actually showed up in my bedroom and smacked my pillow. So I came home and I went in my room, and I lived in this kind of modular home, and it had the vents in the where the roof is, and the light would come through right there. So I kind of laid down, and for some reason I opened my eyes, and there was this big black ball in front of my face, and I kind of freaked out and jumped out of bed, and I'm like, oh my God, it just must be my nerves. It's been kind of a rough night. And so I stacked all my pillows up on my headboard, and I plugged a night light in because I'm kind of freaked out right now, And so I laid back down, but there was a little bit of pillow in front of my face. And I closed my eyes, and it was like somebody walked up and smacked the pillow, and I could see the impression on the pillow, and I could hear it. And then like this cold wind went across my face, and that was it. It never happened again. So I kind of took it like it. And I knew these boys, they were friends with my kids. They sat on my couch and hung out all the time. So I think it was just his way of saying, hey, it's okay. I'm good. So, and that's when I kind of started believing that there's a little more to all this than I wanted to admit. So
yeah, talking before the show, Ryan, you were also a volunteer firefighter, and now you're a paid firefighter.
Yeah.
Is that where you guys met?
Kind of. We met at the local junior college because we both were helping teach an EMT class, and that's kind of where we met. What is it? A long time ago now.
Yeah, it's been a while.
We've been married for 10 years, and I think it was 5 years before that. So when we started doing stuff together at the college, and then 20 to 25 years being in the industry of firefighting and first responder, I always had experiences, and so I've always believed in the paranormal, but I've never had anything that was like in my living room like it happened to us at home. And that's what kind of like really drove us into getting into the paranormal, not just the investigating, but we decided we wanted to go deeper. So we've done a lot of different things. At least we think it's different than what a lot of other just regular ghost hunters do. So.
Yeah, so I assume Paranormal Triage, the first thing, I thought of is that's a very interesting group name, knowing now that, you both are first responders. It's probably where that came from.
Yeah. Yeah.
So taking the triage portion into account, what do you do that you see as different than kind of the run of the mill or a standard investigation team?
Well, I would say we kind of blend a lot of what other people are doing together. At least we're trying to. So the triage, obviously, the French word means to sort, right? So it's not just sorting, how haunted something is or how much of paranormal activity, but it's more of a sorting through the different types of facts and evidence we get and trying to connect them to other facts and evidence to kind of bridge the gap. Most of it is history related. So we're trying to kind of pull the veils back of all the layers of history of somewhere and try to connect the paranormal activity to the individual layers of history of a certain location. So that's where the sorting comes in.
I have said it on here before that as paranormal investigators, you do become a historian because you do look at some of that history, and we love to tie that history into what we do and then go back, and anyone that watches our stuff will see that we'll find old ads for the buildings that we're in to show what was in there before or link that to what we have found.
Yeah. Yeah. We also lived in like 100-year-old ranch house for a little while when we first met. And that house, it used to be an apple orchard, and then it turned into a cattle ranch. But, the quarters were downstairs in this house. And, by the time we moved there, it was kind of all old and decrepit downstairs in the basement, but it was creepy. And there was definitely something in that ranch house. And it wasn't demonic or out to do any harm to us. I think it was just lonely spirits that were left there, but it was pretty creepy. Ryan has more stories to tell about that, but yeah, it's just related to all the history there because, 100 years.
And the other aspect of the triage is not only are we trying to sort the different history facts and connect them with the paranormal experiences, but we're also kind of, our tagline is, pursuing a spiritual awakening, right? So everybody has their own journey to follow, and everybody on a teams, you have your team journey, you have your individual journey, and being able to sort through your experiences and how that affects kind of your personal spiritual awakening, whatever that may be for you, to sort through that and make sense of it. That's the other part, and trying to guide people through some of that stuff too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that. I think everyone that's in the paranormal, number one, they always have such an interesting personal story about what got them into it. Very rarely is it just, oh, I read a book about ghosts and I got interested, right? Like a lot of times it's this deeply personal experience that happened. Um, and then going on to the history, like Aaron said, we're very big on the history as well. He's got a good story, Aaron, when you were looking into the history of a house here in Cheyenne that we were going to investigate. How many owners did that house have?
So from 1883 until 19, oh, I want to say I had 25. It had 72 owners. So I asked the gal at the title company, I have a friend who will pull those. They're all public record. She's like, hey, you need anything, let me know. So she sent me all the owners, and I was like, the house was built in 1913. Like, so is this common that there was this many owners? And she was like, absolutely. People would own the lot. They couldn't afford to build. They'd sell. Next person thought they could, then they'd sell. And then once you have the house in there, healthcare wasn't great. So someone would die, the house sells. And I was like, holy cow, I didn't realize that during that time you could have that many people in a house. I mean, then the history of it goes back, how many families and how much trauma was in there or something like that,
Yeah, especially in where we're at, our area, a lot of people think of California as, big cities. They think of Los Angeles or, Malibu and stuff like that, right? Especially with all the recent stuff in the news that you see these big populated areas, but you come to Northern California, Central California, into Northern California, it's agriculture and then goes into mountains, right? So a lot of the old buildings and old history is still here. It hasn't been bulldozed and redeveloped. So we get to experience a lot of those old houses. We're right next to Shasta Dam, which is kind of like starts the whole water path that leads all the way down through California's agriculture and waters Southern California. So it's like we have a lot of still standing old history, which is really cool.
Nice. They've started tearing buildings down around here to put up new stuff, and it's like, stop. That's what the cool history. And those buildings were usually built a little better anyway, and it's just I like that, where there's like old buildings and stuff.
Yeah, our historical society locally, they try to step in and stop some of that. They haven't been able to stop all of it, but they've been able to save.
They've done a really
quite a
good
few
job.
things here, so that's kind of nice. Yeah. Because without our history, we really don't have paranormal. If you start covering that up, you might lose a little bit of that energy, over time. So it's a little disappointing to watch that. Yeah. Because it was way cooler back then when they built stuff, in my opinion. I'm not, I like the Jetsons, but I really don't want to, float around in spaceships. I kind of like my feet on the ground.
Oh no, I'm pretty sure Gina's watching. She'd love a robot maid.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Favorite place you've investigated? What is that?
Man,
it's hard to say because they've all been kind of fun and different and interesting. I think right now we're doing a project right now on the Shasta Dam. And the thing about California is this was like probably one of the first settlements on this side. We used to be a Mexican territory. So when the Spanish came in, they were kind of wiping out tribes. And then you got your settlers and the gold rush coming in on this side and kind of going at war with everybody and each other and Indians and all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot of energy and a lot of story up and down California. So it's hard to say.
We've had a lot of kind of run of the mill and a lot of cool old places that we've been to. We've had some awesome experiences in private homes, but the current project we're working on, I think so far has been my favorite. We obviously can't go inside the dam because the U.S. government won't let us, but learning about the Native American history that is so often just forgot about, especially in this part of California, that they're working so hard to keep. And then the fact that we can't go into the dam, but we can get pretty darn close and be able to have some cool experiences so far. That's been my favorite.
Yeah.
Nice. You were talking about your house. Besides the kid you had from the accident, what else has gone on there?
Well, I guess we'll start it off here. We had a lot of kind of trauma within our own family and our own house, right? And sometimes I think that can lead, talking about the spiritual journey, right? Sometimes I think that can kind of open us up to certain things. And we had like a string of stuff that happened. And that kind of led to us really deciding this is what we want to do and pursue this on a deeper level than just trying to, hear a voice on a spirit box.
Yeah. Yeah. This started in like 2022. In April of 22, my father passed away. And I was there when in his last moments. And we brought his ashes home. And I had never really done that before. Usually I have a funeral and you call it good, but we had him cremated and I ended up with his ashes. And about, I don't know, I would say a week after we got him home, my dad was an old logger, so he was pretty spicy, pretty old school thinking and practical joker, stuff like that. And so that was his thing, was joking around all the time. So about a week after bringing him home, things started going on in our house. And Ryan experienced more of that than I did when it came to my dad. I'm not sure why.
Well, I mean, I don't know if he just kind of related to me differently, but it was when she was still working shift work on the ambulance. So she'd be gone for 2 days at a time. I'd be home with the kids and I am just naturally up late. So around 11 o'clock or so, all the kids are in bed. It's just me watching TV by myself in the living room. And the kids have a toy police car. It's battery operated, but you have to like push on the light bar to get it to go off. Well, it just started randomly going off. And I was watching a TV show that was about loggers. And, her dad, and he was a logger and he did not like the police. And he was very boisterous about that. Right. So it just kind of so happened that we had visited Las Vegas and we had gone to Zach's museum because we were kind of into that at that point, the novelty of it. But then those things started happening. That happened on more than one occasion to me. And every time it happened, it's like, oh, I got to get the video camera out. And I'd set everything up and then nothing would happen. So it's what you would least expect just kind of happen. And I tested the car, I changed the battery, I did everything you could possibly to do to like debunk what was going on, but it would just keep happening. So that was kind of the first experience with that. And then it kind of spawned into more stuff that happened.
Yeah. More toys going off. I only experienced one toy. My kids have like this ball and it's a cloth ball and it does the ABCs, but you have to hit it. You got to hit it pretty hard, which is kind of weird for a toddler. But so I was walking across the living room one night and the ball laughed. It was like a child's giggle. And the ball doesn't have a giggle in it. There's no laughing or kids talking. It's just A, B, C. So I was like, stop me in my tracks. I'm like, oh my God.
that ball's going in the garbage. Yep.
Yeah. So that was really strange. So we were going through all that. So then obviously we started going down the rabbit hole. We were filming more, trying to catch something happening. But 7 months after my dad passed away, I lost my oldest daughter, and she was hit and killed by a car. And
oh, geez.
So then we brought her ashes home, and somehow they have a half sister, and somehow they brought part of their dad's ashes to my house while we were doing the celebration of life for my daughter. So now I had my dad, part of my daughter, and part of their dad, and he wasn't always the nicest person. They say that you're how you are in life, you kind of are that way in death. So
that way in death. Yep.
Yeah. So after we brought her ashes home, things really escalated. And I learned that I'm an empath and all that. So I've had experience ever since I was little, just weird relating to stuff I shouldn't have been relating to. I don't see ghosts. I don't see people. I don't tell people, I don't give people messages, but I know when there's spirits in the house. And I always know where we're probably going to catch something if we're going to get anything. So that had happened to me since I was a child. But the religion I can never really talk about it or address it. So when we had the 3 ashes in my house at that point, I started getting affected like pretty negative. I was just getting drained of my energy. I was tired. In the middle of the night, I would just go into like these rages if the kids woke me up. I wasn't like freaking out, but it was hard to contain this anger that I had. It was super weird because it's not really, I don't get mad over that stuff. I'm pretty patient. So it was just having all these dizzy spells and stuff like that. So kind of realized that I probably was an empath on some level. Now I haven't written that in yet, but I'm still kind of working on that. not sure how wide I want to open that door yet.
And naturally things started to happen to us. So it's like we invested in some equipment, bought some cameras and, infrared stuff. And we started down that whole process of buying equipment and doing things and learning how to use it. So we would spend nights after the kids went to bed. We'd, be out in the living room, just, okay, let's learn how to use this. Let's practice with it, learn it, so that when we actually decide to go do an investigation somewhere other than our house, we know how to use this stuff.
Yep.
And we ended up capturing some things in our house, some, anomalies on the camera and different things like that. And then, we decided to tell people. It's like, well, I guess we're doing this now, so we're going to dig into it. We started telling people, and that's kind of where everything went. We captured a very prominent like manifestation out of the carpet, with kind of a long stringing anomaly when we were kind of doing a spirit box session, with some of her late daughter's kind of things out. And that kind of really was like the eye-opening moment that this is real. And I experienced it because it kind of went through me. And I had that, and I'm not an empath whatsoever, right? I don't get feelings other than, goosebumps here and there. But man, I felt it. And, it was a very distinct feeling. It's almost indescribable how it feels. And that I was at that point, it's like, there's something else out there and we need to start looking for it.
Yeah. That was pretty interesting.
So with all this stuff going on, then you decided to contact Zach's program?
Yeah. So when we
It's kind of
started
an
capturing
accident.
this stuff in our camera, you're always gonna like self-doubt yourself. It's like, that's just stupid. It's probably a bug. But it wasn't that, because with my daughter also lost a child. So when we were catching these specific anomalies, I started realizing when there was one, there was a second one. And the movements were very childlike. And there is a difference. Like, you can definitely tell that, like, this is kind of moving like a child and playing peekaboo. And when, the anomaly we think is my daughter. And when you've seen that one come out, this second one was always bouncing down, following her down the hallway. So the energy runs from our bedrooms down our hallway into the living room. So it's that path.
Wow.
So they're always kind of going dancing down the hallway like that. So we kind of wanted to know if we were seeing things, or are we just losing our minds? This is kind of pretty close. So they put out a feeler for house calls, and just out of kind of humor, we're like, let's send our little stupid anomalies in. Because at that time we knew there was something different, but you're still doubting yourself.
Yep.
And so we sent it in, and they contacted us, and we're like, well, we don't want to waste your time and have you come out here if it's just dust, or whatever. And the guy that was, puts this all together, he's like, no, this is real. I've been doing this a long time. I don't, we're going to come out. So they came out, and they were really awesome. And they captured everything that we had already captured. So it kind of confirmed that, this is real. So this is definitely real.
Yeah, kind of an accident that it happened. It was more of like, let's send this to someone who looks at this video footage all day long, every day, and will tell us, yeah, you're just getting dust. And then we'll know, okay, well, let's try something different. But it was the opposite.
So how did you feel after receiving that confirmation from someone like Zach's team that, there was something in your house?
Well, it was a process, right? Because even when they came to the house, I still was like, okay, they're going to do this investigation. And I know that there's an entertainment value and factor to the whole thing. Right. So I wasn't, I didn't have these crazy expectations. The crew was awesome. The guys that investigated, Billy, Aaron, and the guys, they did a really good job, and they were very open-minded, and I was expecting them to not catch anything during their investigation. And then when they captured the exact same types of anomalies we were catching on our film, it really kind of solidified that, all right, I can do this. So the processes that we're taking, we, obviously being first responder type people, were very kind of protocol driven, right? Is the best word to say. So, there's a methodology behind what we do. We're not just going out and putting tripods up and going for it. There's a methodology to what we capture, and eliminating, putting it in the yes or no box. And I wanted to make sure that what we were doing was right. And after seeing what they did, it kind of really solidified that, okay, our methodology is working. So,
and it kind of helped me like just come to the terms that my daughter was not in the physical form here, because it was pretty not too far past after my daughter passed away. It wasn't too long that they came to my house. I think it was just a few months. So it was kind of helped me deal with, the loss of my daughter, because I kind of believe she's still here. Well, I do believe she's still here. Nobody can tell me any different. People have tried to tell us that the anomaly we caught or the manifestation is like cat hair. It's like, yeah, it's not cat hair, and you can't tell me any differently because I feel it and I've seen it too many times. So yeah, it kind of helped me process all of this and not feel so bad that, maybe after this life we go somewhere else and we're just better. So.
And it's a healing process, right? That whole pursuing the spiritual awakening, for us, it's been a healing process to do this. And if we can take our experiences to someone else's house that's experiencing paranormal activity, we can capture things and explain how it affected us. Maybe it can put some closure to them, or, and the extra, gathering the history and all that stuff is kind of a bonus.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And that's what most of our private household, home investigations have been, is people are like, we're experiencing this stuff. And I don't know whether to be scared or continue to burn sage or, so we don't cleanse houses. We just go in, we investigate, we go, well, this is what we got. This is what we think. And you're probably good to go. I wouldn't be scared. Yep. So, like we don't do Ouija boards. We're not out there conjuring demons and stuff like that. We're more just, let's look at this at a logical.
Yeah, we're taking the scientific approach. Is what you're experiencing real? Is it actually paranormal, or is it something else? And then being able to confirm or deny, just to give them some closure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I don't think Jay will ever come back to my house. So our house is very interesting. If you ever watch the episode,
if you watch the episode, it's definitely the Hollywood element was added to it. But I still have to say that the entire crew, the producers, the people that were there, the investigation that they did was very real, and we experienced it and watched it firsthand. And the things that they did was very methodical, and they did everything right. And our house has a lot more energy in it besides just the ashes that were brought in kind of the trauma-driven energy from us. There was other stuff there, previous owners that had the house had a daughter that had, in EMS words, coded in the hallway, right? So there's been other death in the house. There's a lot of Native American land that's like right there, right? So there's that kind of energy. There's a whole slew of stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because like when we first started telling people, we're like, I don't know how they're going to react. I wonder if they don't want to talk to us anymore because they think we're these crazy ghost hunters. And it was amazing how quick it opened the door for them to tell their story. So in our neighborhood, our specific neighborhood, people talk about a cowboy that walks through the neighborhood. There's like a lady that comes in houses.
So there's a lady in a white dress that walks the neighborhood. People at that point were now, okay, it's okay to talk about this because these people were here. So, right. I mean, that was a good thing that the show was on and people saw it, because then it opened up other avenues for people to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gina's asking what season and episode is yours?
It was season 2,
episode 2.
Yeah. It was called Shasta Lake Emergency.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shasta Lake Emergency.
Yeah. To go right off your comment there, we host a night where people can come and tell their ghost stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love, and we're hosting this skeptic night coming up. We're talking about that at the beginning. And I love those people because they get to come in and tell us, and they're, well, I don't believe, but this one time.
But
everybody has a story, right? And with you opening up, people can now come to you and know, hey, I can tell them a story, and I don't have to feel like I'm weird.
Judged or
come in, I'm like, hey, just know, we're weird too.
Yeah,
because we do this stuff. So yeah, and it's great that other people can come and share those stories about what's going on, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think my favorite part about talking to other people, because I currently have a friend, my best friend, he just thinks everything we do is probably demonic related. So I don't believe that. I mean, to have demons in your house all the time or whatever, I think that takes a lot of work to get their attention if you want it. We don't want that attention, but
Yeah, I think that's pretty rare. And I mean, just being able to have these conversations and be out there and talk like we're talking opens it up. You know, I've had coworkers talk to me about stuff, and my dad, who has never spoken about this in his entire life, just opened up and word vomited about an experience he had, which is pretty
Shocking.
amazing.
That was shocking that he even told us those stories, because we would have never thought that his dad would have.
So you were already kind of doing other investigations before they came in, or did that really make you turn that corner to
That was
team and really get out there and do some stuff?
Yeah, that was the moment. That was the shift, right? Where we decided we're going to actually invest in this and go out and do this. So we had just done a little bit like a hobby around the house type of thing. And that moment was, all right, we can do this. We're going to start in a team and go do these things.
Yeah.
Jason, did you have a question? I saw you like.
Oh, I was gonna just say, to touch on the evil thing. How, there's some people that definitely feel that every presence is evil. But we've talked to a demonologist, demon folklorist, and I think people don't understand like the level of true evil a demonic presence would bring to a location, right?
Mhm.
Like it's not just that, I feel like it's angry, so it's a demon, right? Like I think we talked a little bit about this, kind of, I think who you were in life is probably who you are in death, and a lot of that can also come from the interaction that investigators take with the spirit, right? If you go in there polite, you probably have a better chance of getting, at least more positive results than, if you go in and, throwing stuff around and scream and show yourself and, some of these. But yeah, I've never been a big on, demons occupying everywhere. I think that's just a true level of evil that people can't really understand.
There's a place where they're out there doing their thing, but I don't think it's as common as people think.
Right.
Right. And you look back and you said that there was some Hollywoodization to the episode. And that's something we cover. Like, they have 43 minutes and they need ratings. So they have to do some of that stuff.
It's different when you're on a contract. When you're in contract, everything changes. At the end of all this, we had our little meeting with Zach, because at the end of those episodes, he comes on the computer and, you do your Zoom call with him and he gives his diagnosis. And he said, it wasn't on air, but he said, I know this is entertainment, but, at the end of the day, here's my real advice. So he had some heartfelt stuff to say, take away all the dramatics or whatever. They are human beings, and they were very respectful. They didn't push us to do anything. They didn't push my kids. We kind of left our kids out of it. We let them be involved a little bit, but that goes to another thing. My thing is I've talked to a few parents now that say, oh yeah, I bought my kids a Ouija board. And I'm always like, okay, why would you do that? You got to be very careful. Kids are far more open to this stuff than we are. And it goes back to our own kids. When we were first going through the stuff, our youngest one, who at the time was 2, and she still today does a little bit of weird stuff. But she would wake up in the middle of the night, just unhinged for no good reason, and be standing in the hallway. I think Ryan has a story about that. So I kind of caution parents getting their kids involved too much and too early.
Yep.
And I don't think we have anything evil in our house. No. I mean, it comes down to is our 3 kids are adopted, and they are our grandchildren, right? So when she lost her daughter, we are now taking care of her grandchildren. So I think a lot of what they are experiencing, our theory is that it's mom coming by to say hi. Yeah. And when you're younger, you're for lack of better terms, you're not corrupted by the world. Right. Yeah. So you're more open to a lot of the spiritual things that are happening. So they're seeing and experiencing stuff that I believe is their mom.
Yeah.
Yep. The brains are in that early development stage, haven't put up those emotional walls that, people start needing, right, to just get through life.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and common sense isn't there, right? They haven't learned all of common sense yet, right? So to them, seeing something that's a weird looking thing floating in the hallway, that's just, okay, that's normal, right? Because no one has told them it's bad or wrong.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah, and she wakes up at 3 a.m. like clockwork. I don't know what it is. I know they call that the witching hour, but that child every day wakes up at almost 3 o'clock. Just
it's 90% of the time it's 3 o'clock, and then she's up and then she's awake. Just like I think somebody came in and checked on her, and now she's awake.
and then the middle one, she's 6 now. She's my more. I would kind of feel safe to say that she might be a little empathic because she's my little emotional absorber. And she talks as though her mom's in the house all the time. And she didn't really know her. I mean, she had seen her, but she didn't have a relationship with her. That's kind of a whole long story. But yeah, she talks as though she's having a conversation with her, that she's had a conversation with her. And, some of it obviously it's made up and we have to kind of call her out on it. But so we check her when we have to. But, as far as like parents find Ouija boards for their kids and stuff, I just would caution parents to be really super careful because you just don't know,
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, waking up at 3 o'clock, when we were younger was a witching hour. Waking up at 3 o'clock now is you drink too much water throughout the day.
Absolutely.
So you had that experience, and then you start your team, and you add to your team. There's 3 of you, right? Or is there more? I know there's at least 3 of you.
Yeah, there's 3 of us. Kelly, she was a personal friend of my mom. My mom passed away about a year ago, so she joined our team. And like Ryan said, she's kind of the neutral. She's not the first responder, so she's able to be a little bit more, a little more animated about stuff, and it kind of brings things together. But she had her own experiences with her father. Her father passed away, and she was taking pictures in his bedroom and caught an orb in the camera, and it's not camera flash or orb caused or water. I'm pretty sure it's an orb. I know that's a big topic for people. Either you believe in it or you don't. So, I mean.
And, to be honest, sometimes, when something has a personal take for you, even if it's not necessarily 100% paranormal, if it sparks your spiritual journey one way or the other, that's okay.
And it served its purpose. Yep.
Exactly. So maybe it was a blotch of water, but was that blotch of water put there by something on purpose, right? If it gets your brain going that right direction, paranormal, what does paranormal mean, right? If you break that down into the root words of it, para means to the side of, and normal means normal. So paranormal is just anything that isn't normal.
Yep.
And my perception of normal is different than your perception of normal. Yep. So anything could be paranormal, whether it's spiritual or physical, doesn't matter. It still could be paranormal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So, gosh, I lost it there for a second. Jason, you got anything?
Yeah, so no, just kind of I completely agree, going along with I believe a lot of things happen for a reason, and like you said, that orb may have moved a certain way, and whether your mind was prepared and kind of opened up to interpret that in a way that brings you down the path you're supposed to go on. But that's one thing I love about this. There's so much, and Aaron has a very good way of putting how we use equipment within the paranormal as well, that I always enjoy hearing when he's explaining at our events. And it's that, the equipment we use doesn't capture proof of a ghost or a spirit, right? It measures environmental changes that then have to be interpreted, to see what the result could be.
Right.
And I've always loved that part of it, is just gathering data and, seeing what that kind of opens up for you as far as possibilities.
Absolutely. And to kind of take that a step further, for those people out there that understand kind of the EMS and medical world, some of that is what I do is, we have, heart monitors and blood pressure cuffs and different things that we use to diagnose and collect evidence for a person in a human body, right? We don't have x-ray vision, so we can't see inside.
Yep.
So we have to take all of the data that we get, right? And that's what our paranormal equipment does. But don't forget, you can't get tunnel visioned on the equipment.
Yeah.
You have to look at the environment, just like you would look at your patient. Look at them. What does their skin look like? What do they look like? How does their body language look? So look at your environment as well, and take all of that data together to kind of discern it and make your decision out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally. yeah, I mean, yeah, stuff goes off and you get noises and stuff, but what else is going on in the room? What are you getting on like a digital recorder? All that stuff is a factor.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is there a girl in the corner, saying, I just don't feel right, because that's a
Right.
big play on it, or play part on it too.
Right.
That we've had during our events is that, okay, we start getting some activity, right? We're getting, a cat ball went off, and, the music box starts going off. But at the exact same time, we have people saying, hey, all of a sudden I got really nauseous, or, dizzy, or I just don't feel that there's something right in this room, and they don't know how to interpret that.
Yeah. That's kind of how I work a little bit. So, and we've been on investigations where I'll be talking and mid sentence have to stop because our spirit box will like do this weird electrical thing, and it's just like, oh, there's something here, and I just can't function at that point. So yeah, it's pretty relevant. You got to really pay attention.
We get that at points with our spirit box too. One time when I was doing it, it sounded like all the scanning stopped, and it was just someone ringing a bell. Yeah, and then Aaron has had some weird electrical noises come through during a double Estes. Yeah, it's strange.
Yeah.
I think the spirit box is probably our favorite piece of equipment to bust out. I mean, people think you need to have all this equipment. You really don't. You can investigate with the most simplest tools. Like we went to a cemetery at a lake called Whiskey Town, and we went out there in the daytime because it doesn't have to be nighttime. It's just more quieter, but it was quiet out there because it's a cemetery out on the lake. And we walked through for about an hour and got some pretty interesting responses just with the spirit box and camera.
Yeah.
So you don't really need to have all this SLR cameras. They're fun. It's cool equipment, but it's not really absolutely necessary.
Yeah, I started with a $30 Walmart digital recorder, and I don't know if y'all remember the what was it called, the ghost meter. It was the clear EMF meter with the little dial and the red light that would light up. That's what I had, and
yeah. Gina and I, some weekends we'll just hop in the car and hit the cemetery and cruise around and have the spirit box going and just start asking and questions, or just talk. We're just talking, and then stuff will start talking, and we'll get out and try to figure out who it is or whatever. And
cemeteries are my favorite. They can get a little scary, especially in our area, because obviously we live in Native territory. So there's a lot of American Native cemeteries up here. So we kind of steer clear of them right now because it's kind of a sensitive topic up here, especially. I don't know how it is everywhere else, but it's still kind of a charged topic in our area. So we had gone to a cemetery because everybody kept talking about it, and we're like, oh, let's go check it out. And it's a private cemetery, but it's kind of off the side of the road. You wouldn't even think there was a cemetery up there because it was kind of just plopped on the side of the mountain, and it wasn't very big. And so we went up there, and right away we knew that we weren't supposed to be there. It just did not want it, but it wanted to suck you to the back of the little plot. You wanted to go in, but then there was that, like, you didn't feel like you were welcome. So I walked about 5 feet in, and Ryan's behind me, and he has a spirit box. We weren't really there to investigate, but obviously we bring something every time we go somewhere. Right. And I guess
well, I mean, we captured some inappropriate language telling us to leave. Yeah. So that was like our cue. All right, we're going to respect you and respect that, and we're going to back out. And we kind of got chased out of there, and we had the cameras going and stuff as we were walking out, and we didn't know what it was. We were just focusing on respecting their wishes and getting out of there. And it wasn't until we reviewed the camera footage we realized that a bat was flying back and forth on the trail and was kind of like chasing us out. And it wasn't just like they would scan by us a little bit. It was literally, it would go down and come back and go down and come. It was just back and forth on the trail, which is odd because bats don't just go back and forth in the same.
It was pretty streamlined flying. It wasn't like the bat that flip and flops all over. But when we turned around to leave, I had actually heard Native American drumming in the background. And then I was like, did you hear that? He couldn't hear it, but I was hearing it. And we kept walking, and then it felt like somebody was following us. And it was like hard steps. It wasn't just like little tapping behind us. It was like boots on the ground. And when we got down and we kind of stopped, and, Ryan's like looking back, and then this thing goes between him and the camera, and you hear this little whistle. And then he was gone, and he got a couple bites on his leg. But by the time we got home, the bites were gone. It was like 3 little bites on the back. It almost looked like little
Wow.
mosquito bites.
It felt like I got stung by a bee, and that's what I felt like. And I'm like, I just need to get off this trail so I can get this stinger out of my leg, but I'm not going to stop moving right now.
Right.
But it was like 3 bites, and with 30 minutes later, they were gone.
And then when we look back at that footage, the bat never made itself visible. Like, it flew in my face twice, and I never saw it. We never saw it until we were almost down to the bottom that it dived on Ryan, and we were able to see it at that point. But in the video, we should have seen it twice. I mean, it was coming up right at me, coming down. And so we kind of think that we are a big fan of Sean Flynn. I don't know if you know who that is. He is a Navajo Indian. He lives in Arizona. He had a podcast with his brother, but they're high up in their tribe. They're doing.
He's kind of like a spiritual warrior within the Navajo. We've talked to him a little bit about it, and he gave us some advice about that and what to do in the future, and as far as offerings and different things if we're going to be venturing around any kind of Native American stuff.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And he said it was probably a shapeshifter. So, there's this whole thing about shapeshifters and skinwalkers, and people do say, oh, we have skinwalkers here. Yeah, no, we don't, because they belong to that tribe in the Four Corners. I think it's Colorado, Arizona.
That area, I'm not exactly sure.
But if they're outside of that area, it's more than likely it could be a shapeshifter. Because he said if we walked in and they were doing some kind of ceremonial practice in the spirit world, they may have noticed that we were there and wanted to scare us off, not to hurt us, but just say, hey, we don't want you here.
Yeah, it wasn't our place to be there.
Yeah.
I would say it's probably one of the more scary times that we've experienced that I've actually kind of had some fear.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the places that we've gone, I've never really had fear. You always get kind of that startled here once in a while, but never had any fear except for there.
That visceral, I need to leave feeling.
Yes.
Yeah. We just heard about a cemetery we're going to check out about 75 miles from us. And it's just a small one. It's a small town south of us. But there's like 150 kids buried there. And we're like, what happened? So trying to do some research to see what happened there and why there's so many, and go from there. But
well, here
it
in
can
California,
be really cool places, or they can be like that, where you're just like, oh, I'm not supposed to be here right now.
Yeah, here in California, we do find a lot of those old, smaller cemeteries that are just full of kids. And I think when the settlers came, they brought a lot of disease and stuff like that. So most of the kids passed away due to disease, and same with some of the tribes. A lot of the tribes got sick. But it's kind of sad when you go to one cemetery and it's like all kids. You're like, and then and then there's a smaller cemetery just south of us down, in Anderson. It's just below Redding, about 15 minutes, and that one has like 50 unmarked plots out there. There's a little tag, but there's no name. It just says unknown. There's like 50 of those, and then the rest of them are like, this is my brother or my sister, but they're all young. So it's pretty sad and interesting.
There's probably a pandemic or something that rolled through and something happened is what I'm thinking. We don't have like dates yet and stuff, but we'll probably get down there and then try to do more research around, that time in that area.
Yeah, everywhere kind of geographically across the United States has kind of their boom of kind of history of stuff that happened, right? And where we're at in this part of the country and in California specifically, it was the gold rush and like the copper mines, right? So there's a lot of that history about people just flooding into this area because of the, gold fever. And so there's a lot of unmarked graves everywhere.
Yeah.
Wow.
You got to figure through that. I feel a desperation kind of hanging over on the spiritual level, right? These people that were coming out just desperate to make their lives better, through the gold rush.
Yeah, and when the dam was being built here and they were moving everybody, they were moving cemeteries and people, not just tribe. A ton of tribes they moved, but they were also moving cemeteries. So they were moving bodies, with the little time that they had. And you have to remember World War II started. So we have a lot of World War II and those type of cemeteries here as well.
We have a lot of veteran stuff up here.
They talk about moving people out of them, and then how many do they really move?
Well, that's the biggest thing, especially with Shasta Lake and the dam. They didn't give the natives very much time to just kind of pack up their stuff. So, there's still people that they were never able to move that are under the water. They flooded entire cities.
If you ever get to Tucson, they do a cemetery tour just a couple of times a year. And now that whole area is housing.
Yeah.
It's more towards the downtown area, and it covers, I don't even remember how many square blocks, but we walked quite a while. And the archaeologist that gives the tour talks about, oh yeah, these people dug up the spot and put their pool in, and they didn't find any bones.
Yeah.
But this guy over here was just digging for his mailbox post and finds bones. So he calls them, and they're like, "Oh, these are just." So he had to stop digging, right? And they're like, "Oh, these are just dog bones." Okay, so you can go back to digging, and the next shovel load over had the skull in it.
Wow.
And I'm
Like,
like,
yeah.
yeah, they were just dog bones, whatever. And it was so big, such a large area. It was really cool. And this whole area of like fraternal organizations, like the Knights had their people, and the Loyal Order of the Red Men, and the Eagles, and like all these different organizations. And they talk about, and I don't remember which group it was, but they owned that spot, so they own the bones.
Mm-hmm.
So the museum takes the bodies in and contacts the organization. What would you like us to do with these? And this was like 8 years ago. Well, the people they contacted are no longer there. So now these bones are just in this museum waiting to be interned again or whatever. But the people they contacted are no longer in charge.
Yep.
So they don't know that these bones, whoever's new doesn't know this person's over here in the museum. And
Wow.
it makes me look back, like those organizations, those people used to, back in the early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s, they'd give everything to these organizations. If they weren't at home, they were doing stuff for those organizations.
Yeah.
We see it with the Knights of Pythias, looking back, at their charters and how many people they would have in. And now you look at these organizations and there's like 10 active people, and it's,
Yeah, and that's
don't
actually
know it's
something
there.
that's really
So-
big in this area. Is the Independent Order of Oddfellows is huge in this part of California, and and one of their things that they did is they buried people,
Mhm.
right? And they took care of the sick and educated orphans, and they buried people. And there is several cemeteries around here that are their plots that belong to that organization. What happens when the housing rush finally moves in and things grow and that happens? What's going to happen to those bones, and what does that do to the energy of the area?
Right. You build a house and then, oh, look, someone's grandma's in my living room.
Yeah.
So
I'm pretty convinced in the area where we live, most people that are having and experiencing something is probably because it's built on Native American land. I feel like it's just that energy, and not to say it can't be their relatives as well, but a lot of stuff that we get, we've gotten Native American voices through our spirit boxes and stuff like that. So I'm kind of convinced that the majority is just that energy.
yeah.
Well, and you guys are close to, a very large spiritual point, I guess we'll say, in northern California, with Mount Shasta.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Absolutely. There's a lot of spiritual energy. There's a lot of whatever you want to call it, right? So you've got the Lemurians, you've got the Lost Tribes, you've got Bigfoot, you've got alien encounters. I mean, you name it, people have seen it and experienced there. So there's a lot of energy, and we're 45 minutes south of the base of the mountain. So there's a lot of cool stuff up there and a lot of experiences, and it is. When you visit up there, that is kind of a spiritual feeling. Like when you get close to the mountain, there's definitely a different kind of sense in the air. Very much so.
It's like the Black Hills for us. They're not far, but it's
Yeah.
the same thing,
Yeah.
I snowboard up there. We used to snowboard up there a lot, and it's probably just that energy is just probably the freest I ever feel when I'm out on a snowboard on a mountain. So,
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, the Bigfoot thing is actually really big in that area.
Oh boy.
That whole area is it's like one of the, there's several areas across the country that have that, but as far as in California, that is kind of the centralized mecca of Bigfoot sightings. And I've never seen one, but I swear that I heard it. It's a sound that you can't forget. it's hard to explain and you can't forget it.
Jason
Yeah.
had turned me on to the whole Bigfoot thing recently. We've had Bigfoot Kenny out of Colorado and Nebraska. We're getting ready to go see him at Bigfoot Fest in Estes at the end of the month, and we went and investigated his house in Nebraska. And we had Scott Brush out of Minnesota a few weeks ago. So we talked to everyone like that. And yeah, Bigfoot, I'm just sitting here in awe at some of the things that happen and the noises and the stuff of Bigfoot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't investigated a lot of cryptids. I guess that would be considered a cryptid, right? But I think we're kind of going to lean that way sometime. We'd like to do a little bit of everything. We it's kind of weird to go to Mount Shasta though, because there's a lot of stories of families that have gone camping, and I think there's one about a little boy. They were out camping and he wandered off a little ways and then he disappeared, and he had spent all this time in a cave and then was brought back. But he can tell you everything that was in the cave. And they still, I don't think they really know.
But they can't find the cave, or but he's convinced that he was in a cave, and that area is also very much native. A lot of native stuff happening up there.
Right.
You can't tell me that we have not explored everywhere in the United States.
Oh no, not
with
even.
the Appalachians and the Rockies and Black Hills and that area. Someone can't have been every spot that there is. So
yeah, and there's a lot of caverns up here. They have the Lost City in Mount Shasta. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I think it has to do with the lost tribes that are kind of, I guess they could be mistaken for aliens because they're kind of supposedly have big heads and kind of tiny bodies, and and then they have the Lost City, and people claim to seen the UFOs going in and out of the mountain.
Yep.
Wow.
So it'd be interesting. We have Shasta caverns up here. They say those are haunted. You can go over and boat across and go check them out. Some hikers found those caverns years and years ago, but who knows how many other caverns are like that kind of may lead to something bigger.
Yeah, the underground city has always fascinated me out there with some of the videos, that they have of these UAPs just flying right into the side of the mountain and disappearing. And
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, I mean the whole story about the guy, I can't remember his entire name. It's something Brown, and he supposedly found it, so he gathered up all these people to go check it out, and then they were supposed to meet him in this prairie to go so he could show them the entrance and see the city inside the mountain, and then he just disappeared, and no one ever saw him or heard from him ever again.
Yep.
And that's, people go missing all the time in Mount Shasta.
Yeah.
I know there's part of it that it's very wilderness, right? And people can get lost in the wilderness, but then you have people that are experienced mountaineers and stuff that also go out there and are never heard from again.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Well, yeah, you have the missing 411 case from Mount Shasta that where a guy and his friend, both experienced mountaineers, were going up the face, and his friend turned around and his buddy's just gone. And Pallades went out there, and looked, and it's just this wide open area that there's no way someone could just disappear there. There's no trees, there's some boulder fields, but nowhere a body could, fall and disappear at this point.
Right. Yeah, there's a little campground just about, I'd say probably 25 minutes south of Mount Shasta in Dunsmuir, probably below Dunsmuir, but there's a camping area there called Sims Campground, and a family was out there, and one of the men went by the restroom or going to the restroom, and he just disappeared.
And there's nowhere to walk. You walk across the creek, it's just straight up mountain terrain. So he didn't climb a mountain, and then going the other way, he would have had to walk, 20 miles to get back out to where the road is. So it's like he just disappeared. No one ever saw him again. And, in that area, there's some native, folklore of that river having, shapeshifters or sirens and people like that would entice you to come out and cross the river or go into the river. And the river's not very deep right there, so you can walk across about waist deep. Yeah. So I mean, it's passable, but there's a lot of folklore out there too.
Yeah, so even on Shasta Lake near the dam, we kind of, when we were doing some research to do this story on the dam, we heard a story that the chiefs supposedly tell. We haven't confirmed it because when we've asked about it, they kind of get silent about it. But when they built the dam, they were angry and they did one of their sacred ceremonies and conjured what they call the horned serpent. And it was supposed to watch over the forgotten land and kind of wreak havoc and scare the workers away. And there are probably well over 19 people missing on Shasta Lake. They go out fishing and never come back, and nobody has found them. So it kind of has its own Bermuda Triangle.
They'll find just empty boats.
So I mean, is there a horned serpent there really, or do we just have a Bermuda Triangle? It's kind of one of those weird things.
And the interesting thing about that is, that comes from a tribe that is kind of based out of Mount Shasta, right? So that tribe was that area. That whole area of Mount Shasta down all the way to the river, kind of to that geographic area. So that's the tribe that was out of Mount Shasta, and that's the one that supposedly, called upon this horned serpent to scare off the construction workers so they wouldn't build the dam and flood their sacred area. So now you've got people boating and fishing and floating over sacred area with this so-called horned serpent. Now we've got missing fishermen.
And the locals do talk about, obviously we're a big magnet for campers and wakeboarders and stuff like that. They talk about seeing shadows cross the lake and lights underneath the water and hearing that Indian drumming, that drumming in the distance. So people do hear it and see it. So it's interesting. Maybe we'll have to do an investigation on a boat one time.
Yeah, that'll be a first.
I tell you, the lights under the water, seeing some of the research that's been done, down in like the Caribbean and that with the UAPs that are, surfacing out of the ocean, and that fluorescent green light, that's always seen. And, some of the videos of the light going right underneath boats. I would love to go out and research that stuff. Yeah,
that would be fun. It's a little scary, but I hate being anywhere where, the fish are bigger than me and they can eat me. So right.
There we go. Wild trip to the Caribbean.
There we go.
The Shasta Lake is like 500 and something feet deep. So we have sturgeon that are bottom feeders down there that are as big as Volkswagens. So I don't know if they're surfacing a little bit and scaring people, but they're not good eating, but you can eat them if you want. There's bottom feeders.
There are accounts that people are talking about where they've seen, like a long, dark, scaly thing come up and surface. It's kind of like, California's Loch Ness monster, right? That's what they equate it to. But, we've kind of connected some of those sightings to this potential folklore of the horned serpent that was, sent there by the natives to scare people away.
And then they're still talking about raising the dam, and that would be kind of sad because it would kind of wipe out a lot more of the places they go to do their ceremonies. It would kind of do a lot more damage than they probably really need to do. So not just that, but people live out there and have businesses. So if they raise the dam again, it would be another kind of tragic thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Because we drought pretty good sometimes. I don't know. When it's full, we're happy. We're stoked.
I think this is the first time in a long time that California hasn't been in a drought. Yeah. So
we're looking at going into a drought actually this year. I went up to a couple of the local lakes, and they're about 15 feet down. It's looking bad.
Yeah. Our winter was pretty rough. Not much snow this year. Well, Ryan and Brenda, we thank you very much for coming on. You're great people. Your stories are phenomenal. Hopefully we can make it out your way and meet up with y'all.
That would be awesome.
Investigation at Mount Shasta or something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We're headed out there this summer. We're going to the Pluto caves. So
nice. I really like your mentality and your outlook on it. And I think, I would like the work y'all are doing. Love to have you guys back on and talk more.
All right.
Absolutely.
We would love that. Thanks for having us on. You guys are awesome.
Great conversation.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
We're going to put you in the green room. We'll catch you in a couple minutes.
Okay.
Jason, as usual, it seems we're getting some great people on the show.
Yes.
Wow. Just another good night. I like how we just come up with stuff and ask them, and everyone's pretty open to it,
Yeah. I love just hearing what people are doing. I mean, like we talked about, the paranormal is such a wide open field. There's no real left and right limits, to how you do it, right? It's all kind of guided by your own moral compass, how
Right.
you do this. And yeah, hearing all these people's stories, like I was saying about how, everyone's got a deeply personal story about how they got into the paranormal,
Yeah.
and I love hearing those, love hearing about the work being done.
Yeah, I know they can hear me, guys. I'm so sorry for your loss, and also thank you for what you do in the EMS field.
Yes,
A lot of people know I was a volunteer firefighter 25 years ago. Thank you guys for doing that, because that takes a special kind of person.
it does.
So, thanks everyone for watching tonight. Next week we will have Ryan Dutton from Paranormal Theory.
Oh, outstanding. Yep, another
Yeah,
Paraflex guy.
another Paraflex guy.
Good
So,
deal.
again, we thank Ryan and Brenda for coming on from Paranormal Triage. Go check out their page. Go check out their Facebook page. And yeah, that's
All
all I
right,
got
we'll
to say.
see y'all next week.
Good night, everyone.
The Paranomalies podcast would like to thank Horn Paranormal Research and Twinkle Twinkle Little Store for sponsoring our show. If you're craving more paranormal content, don't forget to check out our YouTube and Facebook channels at Way Out West Paranormal. On YouTube, we bring you investigations and all sorts of chilling adventures involving the Way Out West crew. On Facebook, you can join our growing community of fellow paranormal lovers for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and more. You can catch all of our episodes of Paranomalies available on Apple Podcasts, Facebook, and YouTube. Be sure to like and subscribe, as it helps others find the show and join in on the paranormal fun. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, keep your lights on, stay safe, and remember, the truth is out there, and it just might be closer than you think.